Hello, everyone, or as they say in Italian, buongiorno.
Yes, good
Ciao.
start. Welcome to Book Boys episode 12, I think it's now.
Who's counting? Um, we're here with our first guest ever,
Yep.
and we're talking about Dante today. Can you just briefly introduce who you are and how we came to be known? Wait, what?
How are you conceived?
Why are we acquainted?
So hi guys. Great honor to be here with the Book Boys. Big honor. First ever celebrity appearance.
Yes.
So I met Phil in Rome. We were staying in a truly terrible hostel.
Yeah.
It was really bad. We connected. It was good to hang out and got the Insta, so kept in touch that way. And
Hmm.
when you set up the mighty Book Boys podcast, I was invited to be here. And since you asked,
Yep.
Nice.
you said, what books can you speak about? And I said, well, either Herodotus or Dante. But, I didn't want to ask you to go through 600 pages of Herodotus. It's like a bit of a bore at times, So we went with the good option.
Nice.
Okay.
You never want to do that.
Yeah, and you're coming.
Huh?
And you're coming live to us now from
Dublin. I'm a Dubliner.
Nice.
Dublin. Yeah, 8-hour time difference.
Yeah.
So it's night for us now.
Yeah.
So, I don't, do you say Ciarán? Ciarán.
Ciarán.
I don't think you said your name.
Ciarán.
Kieran.
This is Ciarán.
Yeah.
Say hello, everyone. So, yeah, anyway.
Alright, before I euthanize you all, let's start with the meat. So we're reading the second part of Dante's Divine Comedy, which is Purgatorio. So people usually know Dante's Inferno, which is the first part where they go through all the circles of hell, and then Purgatorio would be purgatory.
Yeah.
And then the third and last part is Paradiso, where they go to the Garden of Eden.
What does Paradiso mean?
What do you
I'm sorry.
think? What do you think, fucktard? Okay. Anyway, a little background on the book. When was it written, Nick? Can you tell me the exact date?
1344?
Uh,
Is that correct?
I don't know.
30 years off.
Ah,
It was close, but yeah, close. Good try.
1314?
Begun around 1307, completed 1321.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
getting now.
He knows his stuff more than
Yeah,
we
you
do.
have a true speller here, guys.
All right. So a little preface, in Inferno, which is the first part of the series, Dante, the protagonist, I guess, is Dante in this story, gets acquainted with the ancient Roman poet Virgil, and
Very good.
yeah, so Dante gets sent by Beatrice, his dead girlfriend, through. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. It's
right.
been a while since I've read Inferno. She sends Dante through literally hell, and Virgil is kind of a guide, a trapped soul who accompanies Dante, and so Purgatorio starts. Basically, they left hell, they climbed out of hell. Went deep into hell, and then came out at the southern hemisphere.
Right.
So as you said, early 1400, 14th century. I mean, so geography and so on wasn't as developed. So now we have this image of the Earth is a globe, but the southern hemisphere is just like a big sea with Mount Purgatory in it, and that's where we come out of.
It's meant to be opposite.
And what is Purgatory?
It's meant to be opposite Jerusalem on the globe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So, what were you saying?
So I was saying, what is purgatory? It's the next question,
Ah.
and I'll leave that to anyone who wants to answer.
I feel like it's kind of directed here, so it's a mountain. It's a great mountain. It has seven terraces, and on each terrace, one of the deadly sins is purged. And Dante goes, he ascends, and it's harder to climb at the beginning, but as he begins to get further up, it gets easier.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite parts about this, actually. Yeah. We'll get into that.
So then at the peak is the paradise, right? Or it's described as like the
entrance to Eden. Right?
Yeah. Which is like the ultimate kind of goal of the book. It's described in my book as the earthly paradise, which is the entrance to heaven, essentially, right? And that's when Dante reaches that point. That's basically when the book comes to a close.
Yeah.
And then I don't know much about the final book, Paradiso, but could you tell us like what kind of content like we like read in that book?
I'll give you an idea because I'm on Canto 20 really, so but you haven't.
Right. Okay.
I get the impression of what it's like. It's kind of the same. He's ascending to heaven, and he's instead of terraces and purgatory, he's going to different planets in space. So he's on Venus or he's on Mars, and he's speaking to his ancient ancestors, speaking about courage and being a good crusader and spreading the doctrine. And he's like, yeah, I will.
Nice.
But the style is very different. I mean, it's like there's a really tangible difference in the way the poetry is in the two books, which is interesting.
Right. Cool.
That's a bit of an idea.
Right, and on a note of style and poetry, we've noticed that apparently makes quite the difference. Obviously, we're reading this in English. Which translation you're using?
Yeah.
So, Nick, you have probably one of the better ones.
Yes.
Hoffman.
It's who was it? Let me just check. Oh god.
Okay, my translation is Henry Francis Carey.
Henry Francis Carey.
Right.
Henry Francis Carey, I guess. Cary.
Right.
So I read like when I was kind of looking for when I was before I started reading the book, I think we came across a lot of problems when we were reading like Dostoevsky and even Kafka as well. Like the translation making such a huge difference to how we kind of appreciate these books. So I wanted to kind of like get an idea of what which translation I should go for. I went with the Hollander one. Hollander Brothers, I think. There's two of them. I think it's quite widely used, but I came across this article and this guy had read through like maybe 20 different, like 15 to 20 different versions, and he gave like really detailed comments on all of them. And like also going through this, just the notes on the introductory section of this book, the number of people who've made like very lengthy commentaries on just this on the comedy, like from the 1300s onwards, there's just like so many people that have contributed to the study of this book. It's like really, really, really amazing, really. So it's like sort of when it comes to like approaching these books, like you kind of can judge its scale by how many translations there are and how many of these like big, a lot of people have spent a lot of energy talking about this book. But with that said, it was surprisingly readable. At least my version.
Really?
Yeah, it was helped a lot by like. I wouldn't say that the text itself wasn't necessarily. I don't know. There were parts where I had absolutely no idea what was going on. It took a long time to figure out, but the edition that I have had some very useful, like quite brief outlines with line numbers for each canto, which is really useful. So I guess what I want to say is that even though it's like got a lot of prestige and it's got all this history that there are ways of reading it that aren't as like, painful.
Yeah, I think I had quite
painful's wrong, you know what I mean.
No, I would definitely use the word painful. In fact, I would describe my experience of purgatory as purgatory. Except it doesn't get easier as you climb up. I don't know, the Henry Francis Carey, whatever his name is, translation, I had a good time interpreting it. I had a terrible time reading it. Like all the prose is like broke up into weird line breaks, and like I had no idea who is talking when there's more than one person. Like when someone's speaking, I had no idea if this is the narrator or someone's talking. Like, yeah. How about what translation did you use? Now, how do you feel about it?
I've got the great Mark Musa translation, and he's pretty good. Like it's really kind of neat. It all has a nice note, good commentary, and it's kind of like the book found me in a way. Like I went into a shop and I was like, I was looking for Dante and Virgil as well, and I only needed Purgatory and Paradise because my course was on Purgatory and Paradise for last term. But I just found them sitting there, and it's like, it's perfect. So it's a great translation. But
nice.
Yeah, but like it was the most enjoyable thing ever. Like, I'm sorry to hear you guys are like, it was like purgatory. I was on the fourth terrace for like,
There were some moments like I think I had the same. I read some of Odyssey. I haven't finished it, but it's kind of got this. It's like really beautifully translated, but following what's happening is difficult. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like appreciating like the significance of certain things is quite hard. But like I said, with this outline it has, in my version, it like kind of tells you like what some significant things to look out for. But yeah, some of like the writing is like just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Just super nice.
I found some of the passages though where I got lost were like, Virgil's gone off into a like doctrinal teaching on the like Christian resurrection of the soul or something, and like, it kind of, or the vegetative soul. What's this?
Embryos. There's a section about like embryology, like I think it's Statius that talks about like embryos, and I was like, what's going on?
All right, station.
So anyway, we can talk about. I think we can go and talk about the structure of the book now.
Yeah.
So it's set up into quite short. They're called cantos, right? Very short kind of chapters, and I think most translations and of like the original Italian was written as a very very long poem, right? So that it has like a meter, and it has like I don't know if it has rhymes, but so the different translations will approach it differently, but it's kind of takes that structure, and as Ciarán said earlier, this Purgatory is a big mountain, and it has these things called terraces, which are these different points upon the mountain where, as Dante climbs, he's faced with, I guess you could maybe say, they're challenges, and they all relate to the seven deadly sins. So we have pride, envy, wrath, sloth, avarice, which is
it's kind of greed, but it's a little different.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. Gluttony, and finally lust. But then before that, we also have like a kind of I guess like a lobby.
I forgot
there are some pre-stages. There's like the anti-purgatory and
the excommunicated.
Right.
Just like Manfred at the bottom is like hectic.
I guess we can. Yeah, maybe we'll put this photo, put one of the photos up as like the as a link, or like with the podcast photo. So yeah, I guess we should just start.
Yeah,
at the
let's just
beginning.
start.
Get stuck in.
Oh, and small point on the fifth terrace, it's the avaricious and the prodigal, because that's the one on Statius is on, and like he wasn't
Right.
avaricious, but he kind of thought he was great.
Okay. Cool.
Right. Yeah, I guess, avarice or greed or whatever you want to use, like, I guess frivolously spending money was seen as the same kind of category of vice, right?
Mm-hmm. Kind of like an opposite end of it.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. All right, so we start off, at the bottom of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of the first thing that you guys noticed? The first like passage or like point where you there's something here that's worth mentioning.
Who wants to go first?
Silence.
I feel like I'm in class.
Well,
what did you find? Yeah, I know you want to talk about it. So what did you find significant?
I was hoping someone would take this burden off me.
Okay.
No. Well, okay. I guess the first thing that I like, the first like big thing that I noticed is like the idea of purgatory being a mountain, because before reading this, I would think of purgatory. You know, there's I think Hieronymus Bosch, German painter. I think he painted Purgatory.
Yeah.
Which it's basically it looks like hell. Like it's kind of this underground structure where people are boiling in a pot. You know.
Yeah, there's these weird like monsters roaming around, like, chasing people and eating them and shit.
Yeah. So I thought like conceptually, and I'm not like a Christian scholar or anything, but conceptually for me, Purgatory is like basically hell, except you're not there forever. Like you sit out your time and then you leave eventually. So I thought the idea of making it a mountain is very interesting. And especially what you mentioned earlier, the idea that as you climb the mountain, it gets easier. Now, of course, with an actual mountain, this won't be the case. However, but you know, this is the idea that, you know, the more virtues you commit, the better person you are, the easier it gets to be a good person.
Yeah.
But the more vice you fall victim to, you know, the easier it is to repeat those patterns of bad behaviors, and you know.
Why are you looking at me?
My mind went to like alcoholism.
You could look here though.
Like if like after I killed my first, imagine
edit that out.
Imagine killing someone.
Like, imagine how much easier it would be to do the next time.
Yeah, it gets easier, right? Like after you killed like 30 people, what's the difference? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. No, so yeah, the mountain metaphor. Oops, my phone fell. The mountain metaphor doesn't make a whole lot of sense, like physically as a mountain to climb it. Like it won't get easier. You know, you'll just get tired. But it makes a lot of sense in the idea of, you know, washing away like your sin and you know, becoming more virtuous.
Yeah. That definitely stood out to me as well. And you read it in the same way that I did. And yeah, what else do we have? So we said earlier that Dante is also being led by Virgil, and at the beginning I wasn't quite sure, but like it seemed that like Dante was like, what's the word? Injured? Like he wasn't doing anything. He was like Virgil was taking the reins at the beginning and speaking to was it Manfred, who's the first person they come across? And I was wondering if that has any connects to where Inferno ends. Like is
Well, he's like tired, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I guess so.
Like in a really basic way. Kieran, do you want to talk about Manfred?
There's something about the Virgil. Like I think it's a point. He kind of Dante's approached by this group of souls, or maybe we should even call him the pilgrim, because he doesn't actually name himself until like the last canto or so. Or the pilgrim or Dante, whatever, doesn't matter. He's approached by the group of souls, and he's kind of like, he gets absorbed by what they're saying, and Virgil has to kind of keep telling him off at the beginning, and he's like blushing, he's like, sorry, feeling remorse. But then that kind of contrasts towards the final image when Virgil's like, I crown you master of yourself, but no spoilers, so we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And go on.
I'm also conscious of there's a bit of lag actually, I think, because sometimes when like you say something and I kind of come in, I think it registers like a few seconds later. So,
yeah. We'll fix it in post.
We'll try and speak with a bit more. We'll try and consider that a bit more.
No, you guys. You guys.
No, it's all right. It helps. It helps just to keep the conversation going. It's
right, and another thing is Dante doesn't cast a shadow because Nick.
He's alive.
Why do you keep questioning me? Is it because he's not dead?
Probably. Yeah.
Is that right? Oh, yes.
It has to be that.
Yeah, I figured so much for it. And this is also one of the reasons why Dante is like such a point of interest for everyone that he meets along the way. Right. He's kind of like this, almost like this famous figure who's got this like kind of tour of the place.
It's like when you're on the just visiting section on the Monopoly board in prison.
That's exactly it.
He's got VIP.
Yeah. So he's going through all these like hell and purgatory and so on, but not because he died and like his sins, got him there. Oh, even though he does have sins, but because his like he got sent there basically by Beatrice. Anyway. Okay, so we start climbing Purgatory, and one of the first things we learn, I think it's in Canto 3 from Constanza, is that there's merit in the living ones, the people on Earth, your relatives and friends and so on. If they pray for you while you're in Purgatory, it'll speed up the process of getting through it. Now, this, of course, as a German here, I have to do my Protestant duty and mention Martin Luther and, what is it, remittances? Remittance trading? Is that I think they call it remittances. The Catholic Church at the time, you could buy like little pieces of paper saying,
the indulgences.
Like speeding up your relative. Indulgence, that's it. Remittances is just international bank transfer. Indulge me here, guys. Okay. Indulgences. So you could buy like a piece of paper from the church that would, basically, in theory, speed up the process of you, like whoever you're praying for in purgatory, or also like make your own sins go away. Now it's interesting that Dante put this in here with such a big emphasis as well, because if we think theologically, Dante is not super nice on the church in this whole thing. We'll get to that later with the chariot, but what do you think is the utility of this concept, like having people pray for you on Earth to make your sins go away faster, atonement, to speed up atonement?
What is the utility of it?
Why is that a thing?
Good question.
What's the point? Like, the first thing I thought is like, well, if you were a good person, that would mean that more people, care about you on Earth, like you left a good impression. So it's like a mechanism of ensuring that you treat people well.
Yeah. If people organized effectively enough, though, they could figure something out, like a prayer ring where you like buy some prayer insurance before you die, and then they get like 300, 400, 500 people to pray for you.
Now you're thinking like the church.
Good man.
I don't know. I think it's also interesting. It's like 30 specifically. So you can reduce the time that you spend by 30 through praying.
30 years?
30. It says for every year he spent in his presumption, 30, unless that sentence is reduced by holy prayers.
No, isn't this about... Sorry if I'm wrong on this, but isn't this about the part where if you're excommunicated from the church?
Yes. Yeah, that's true, actually.
So for each year that you spend excommunicated from the church, you spend 30 years in purgatory.
Sure.
Unless it's offset by prayer.
Okay, yeah, sure. In that case, yeah, it's not 30 specifically in this case.
It's interesting how it kind of like, it's one of the first things that Dante puts in as he begins to meet people. Like, you know, it's not speaking about other things, but it's prayer and trying to help people. I feel like it kind of calls into question like whether the comedy is a fiction or whether like it was kind of actually real, because like otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's related to that, but I'm not sure how to explain. Like, do you guys think it is, or there may be a slight strong?
God, no, not.
It's probably good to address it.
Oh, you mean like if?
Yeah.
Like real experience. Or,
yeah, to what extent?
Or made up.
I think, yeah, I mean, at least like in the sense of going through your life, being confronted by these experiences, having decisions to make that like can be judged as virtuous or not virtuous, and then feeling the results of those. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say.
No one knows really.
Nietzsche told me to not trust the poets, so.
Oh,
That's a cop-out. But that's a good point, because I mean, it's like a lot of the characters in this book, as I understand, are based off real people.
Yeah.
And there seems to be like quite a lot of, I don't know, there's it seems deliberate that instead of just using random names, he's actually decided to use real people, and maybe that was to make it more evident, the kind of connection. Like when he talks about Caesar, for example, you can connect that to the way people understood Caesar at the time. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think, like, if you were to, how much do you think this book is based on like a real experience?
That's like, you know, big question. And don't trust the poet.
I know it is. You asked me.
Yeah. But like, I can't say, but I do think that he does, like, he never says, you know, I made this up. Like, he always says, I was there, I saw this. And maybe the fact that he references so much the people that he knew in real life, like Casellas and friend Manfred lived like 50 years before. So like, it's kind of a way of making the teachings a bit more like, kind of presenting them a bit stronger or something. Like, you know, you should kind of pray for this guy's soul because look, I saw him in the Antipurgatory. Something like that.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, and no, for sure. Like, I mean, when you consider like the way people thought about purgatory, I don't know how people thought about purgatory at the time, but like, when it was like a real gripping belief that these places existed, it makes sense that like people that you could have known in real life would be featured in this, like in this story. And like you said, it kind of grounds things. Like if we had like a story today which was fictional but included like people that like we knew from popular culture or something, or politicians, it would be kind of strange. But like, we don't really see stories like that. I don't know.
I met Kanye West on the third terrace for the Sin of Pride.
been up there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing about real people as well is I started reading Inferno when I was actually in Italy. I bought the book there, and I was reading it side by side with Shakespeare's Julius Caesar play, and one thing I picked up is Shakespeare really goes very easy on Brutus and Cassius, the traitors of Caesar in his play, right? He kind of tries to, especially Brutus, he kind of makes the tries to make him more of a underdog character, and he has good intentions, but it just kind of turned out that way. But in Dante's Inferno, in the last layer of hell, they meet Lucifer, who has, I hope I got this right, I think Lucifer is described as having 3 heads.
Right.
The top one is Judas, and the second and third one are Brutus and Cassius.
Really? Wow.
So those are like the worst sinners in humanity, I guess, right?
Right.
Being a traitor, I guess. But throughout the whole book of Inferno, everyone is kind of treated like, well, they're here for eternity anyways, so there's nothing I can do about it, so let's just look at them boil in their pot or burn forever or freeze forever, and oh, that's too bad. But in Purgatorio, which is kind of like a meme, right? But in Purgatorio, there's actually more discourse about why they're here, and how Dante can maybe help them, tell their relatives back home on Earth that they're here, pray for them. So there's more genuine interactions with the people in this section of the book than in Inferno.
Right.
Because in Inferno it's just kind of like, well, you're in hell, so whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Interesting point.
Oh yeah, because there is I mean, I haven't read Inferno, but there is this big emphasis on I guess collaboration in a way. At the beginning when they don't know the way, they don't know which way to go. They're walking around the mountain the wrong way, and they come across people who then redirect them. And yeah, I guess as well, everyone is upward moving, and there's that kind of that sense of momentum. You never cross a character who's going the other way. There's people who stay where they are, but there are, when people move, they move upwards. Which is, I guess, yeah, everyone is dealing with these sins that they've committed and trying to atone for them so they can move forward. So yeah, it's positive, right? I guess we could say this book generally, the movement is positive.
Yeah. Kind of potential to it.
Yeah, people are actually seen as individuals with potential, not just as oh look, he's burning in a barrel for 1,000 years.
I'm gonna cross the street.
Yeah.
Okay, one interesting point that kind of made sense to me after I Googled, but I want to hear you guys' thoughts on it before I reveal, is it's mentioned that Mount Purgatorio can only be climbed while the sun is out.
Oh yeah. What about that?
Why is that?
Whoa! This when I read that, I was immediately thinking of Nietzsche, Zarathustra, because there's I can't remember the chapter. I should have looked at it before we started, but there's a very explicit mention in that chapter of Thus Spoke Zarathustra that basically nothing good comes of the night, nothing good comes of things happening at night.
Right.
And I think when we've discussed this before, in our class, we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe the assumption is that most things that happen at night are essentially sinful things. Bad things happen in dark places where there isn't much light, where these bad actions can't be clearly seen. So when I read that was kind of the first thing that I thought about. What does that make you think?
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, one aspect of the symbolism.
It's like only good things can be done in the daytime. Maybe.
Good answer, Nick.
Oh,
yeah. Thank you. Much better than anything I could say. Like the only thing that strikes me is like it also sort of gave a potential to the story that he could sort of right. You have to go to sleep, so gave him this space to create some kind of cool dream scenes where kind of weird stuff happens.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
It's from like a structural writer's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and interesting, like the book, like in terms of the time, the time scale of the book, it all happens within like a couple of days, as far as like from what I know.
Yeah.
Like there seems to be a lot of attention paid to how many hours are passing for specific things, and for example, like what time is it in Jerusalem? What time is it in like Italy? What time is it in different places in the world? It's like mentioned at different points in the book. But yeah, no, back to the point about sleeping, like I find it something interesting, like it's like the only rule really of the world, like I feel like it's the only thing that they really kind of have to obey, that doesn't really seem to have much of a like clear reason behind it. Like I don't know who tells them, but they are specifically told that like we can't move at daytime, or rather, if you do, you end up moving backwards or something like that.
I don't remember that.
I can't remember specifically, but
don't remember that either.
Well, I'm not gonna take the laurels.
I might be bullshit.
No, go for the laurels.
I'm not going to take the laurels for this, but apparently the canon interpretation, which makes a lot of sense, that I found after googling is, the kind of while the sun is out, it's apparently a symbolism for literally not the sun but the Son, like SON of God, Jesus.
Yeah.
So what makes the ascendant of Mount Purgatory possible? What makes it possible to atone for your sins is the Son of God, Jesus, having died for your sins, right?
Right.
So because Jesus died for your sins, you can even atone at all, right? You're not confined to hell forever.
Right.
Without Jesus, you wouldn't have the sun, which would allow you to climb. That's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Good reasoning.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to bring up one small point on Canto 4, at the end of Canto 4. We meet a guy called Belacqua, and he, for the sin of sloth, he just kind of has to sit there at the foot of the mountain and isn't even allowed to climb it yet. Now this is, well, now we're in anti-purgatory, we're before purgatory still, but there's a term for this kind of punishment, which I think appears in Inferno for the first time, called the contrapasso. A contrapasso is the idea that, which was, this word was apparently created by Dante in this work, but the idea that the punishment that you receive is like tailored to living through a terrible experience that is related to your sin. So, for example, in Inferno, you'll meet a lot of people like, I don't know, if like violent people will like have violence done unto them, or I think, what is it, sorry, go on.
Plato, like for example, I don't know what he does, but Plato's in Inferno, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he is. No. Yeah, so in this case, we have Belacqua for the sin of sloth. He isn't even allowed to climb the mountain yet. He just has to kind of sit there, like revel in his sloth, right? And we'll find it later, I think, as well, with the people who have their eyes shut, wired shut.
Sure. There's when we came across Belacqua, I was thinking of like of Camus. This is brother. What's the good of going up? the angel of God who sits in the gateway would not let me pass into the torments. Like, I read that as more of it was a problem with his own will, like his own willpower, like he's just couldn't see the point in doing it. But no, yeah, it's interesting. Maybe they're not so different actually. Like being punished and also not seeing the point in doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's obviously that they get the sin in the afterlife that they're kind of most responsible for in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently that's called contrapasso.
Contrapasso.
Be sure to order that next time you go to an Italian restaurant. Waiter will look you up and down and analyze you for your sins and then do terrible things to you.
Yes.
Actually, maybe a point of interest. When I was reading over these, just kind of want to impression from English. The first two people who Dante meets and he speaks to both happen to be related to music in some way. So he meets Casella, and Casella, he's a musician, he sings, and Belacqua was a maker of whistles, I think that was it. It seems to be that Dante is kind of saying that kind of music is a bit of a bad thing or something. Like, I wonder, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe musicians are... Well, they're an anti-purgatory, so maybe musicians are like kind of lazy, easygoing people. Maybe that's it.
And also not Christian either, right?
I don't think he meets any musicians.
That's a good observation.
He doesn't meet any other.
Right. And it's interesting because there are lots of people singing on the mountain. Yeah. Like there's a lot of description of singing, right? But it's not like they're not. It's not described as necessarily being music, or as being like a music in quotations or like music with a capital M. It's more like.
That's another thing about so in Inferno, they pass the river Styx at the beginning, and they kind of see like people screaming in terror and agony and like, no, I'm in hell, no, like that,
not again.
Not again. I forgot what the river is called in Purgatory, but they also cross a river. But in this case, there's people like singing in small groups, and like the idea is like, if we do our best, we can overcome this, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in Inferno, it's just like complete chaos. Like there's no way out,
Yeah, and in that sense, it's like things like prayer as well. I mean, it's not quite singing, I guess, but there's like a similar kind of. I feel like those 2 points can meet. Where in this case, it's like singing with the goal of motivating each other to atone for your sins and get to heaven, which is that's like at that point it's kind of music that has a very specific function within like Christianity.
Not just for pleasure.
Cool. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Right, so we're only on Canto 4. In here for like 50 minutes.
This is what happens. But boys!
Yeah.
We're going to get you back for 4 more episodes.
Right?
Alright. Well, also, we meet various kings and like historical people as well, which, especially like in Canto 7 we have like King of Naples, Henry of England, Philip III of France, and
right, yeah.
At the time we're still in this framework of the king is basically appointed by God, right? Wasn't that like the popular belief? So we have to remember Dante wrote this in exile from Florence. He was kicked out of Florence. And there's a lot of kind of political commentary here. And also, he takes jabs at the church as an institution, but also at kings, at rulers. And no one really gets off easy in this work. Certainly not. So, yeah. Just thought it's quite interesting that, he's definitely a provocateur, and or at least he won't. He's not pulling any punches in who he's satiring.
Yeah, and just a note on that as well. Like, a lot of the people, well, all of the people that are mentioned in Canto 7, died within 50 years of the book being published. Like, actually, within like 30 years. So, like, yeah, this is like, the equivalent of, I don't know, could be like talking about like Thatcher. Including Thatcher in your modern day purgatory.
Yeah. Like it was a bit of a kind of it could have been a dangerous move as well, because you could have offended someone very easily.
For sure, yes.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of like. Doesn't feel like he's being particularly discreet about anything.
No.
Which I would say speaks to his character as a poet.
There was a point.
Okay, well, next interesting point. Go on. Sorry.
No, what were you going to say, Phil? No, I'll come back to it.
I was going to skip to a different canto.
Right. I'll take this in quickly. There's a kind of a small point about people, because there's a great quote at the beginning of the introduction to this, and I feel like it really sums up kind of the role of people and what Dante is trying to do. So, the great English poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, in his defense of poetry, says that Homer was the first and Dante the second epic poet. That is, the second poet, the series of whose creations bore a defined and intelligible relation to the knowledge and sentiment and religion of the age we live in. It is in this sense that we may speak of the Divine Comedy as an epic, as a poem that captures an entire civilization, for in it is mirrored a rather complete picture of the medieval European world. I kind of feel like that sums up the overall in it quite well.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Damn. I wish my book had cool notes.
Bargain bin.
I got the
bargain bin Dante.
I got the bargain Dante. No. Okay. Right. I was gonna go to Canto 8, where we have a very cool image of. So during the day we can climb the mountain. During the night, people kind of meet in little prayer groups. But every night, the snake from Eden comes to seduce people into vice, and there's two angels coming down. With this is cool with swords, who are the swords are blunt and broken at the ends.
Yeah, broken at the tip.
They're
also on fire.
Yeah.
Hello.
Fending off the serpent, and the idea, I guess, is that God gives humanity a certain amount of time to get their shit together, but once the swords are worn out, once the swords completely break, it's Judgment Day.
The connection to obviously talking about Eden, but the cherubim, were they called cherubim?
Cherubim, yeah.
That were set at the gates of Eden when Adam and Eve were kicked out. They also had flaming swords. So there's super really blindingly obvious reference to Eden here. There's an interesting point about which I read in the footnotes of my copy about the references to the Bible, that apparently people don't actually know which version of the Bible he was using as reference, and this is quite a significant question, because the story's obviously been refined and changed and throughout history. So when it comes to the study of Dante, knowing how, it's you need to also have a knowledge of how the Bible can be different in order to figure out some certain things from this book. Yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting. Cool.
I mean, what do you guys think about the fact that we see the snake here, and like we're not even in Eden; it's just this random valley, and 1/4 of the way up Purgatory, and there's nothing in the snake in the actual earthly paradise, and he never shows up again.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess similar to the idea of the whole mountain climbing thing. This probably makes sense to interpret not on a like fundamental literal framework, but more so like what does it mean for vice to seduce you while you're trying to become a better person, right? The idea of atonement but being tempted by vice. Because if you think of Inferno, if you think of hell, you're already done in this worldview. If you think of paradise, you're clean, you're perfect, all your sins are forgiven. So really, the only place where it makes sense for the serpent to appear is in Purgatory, right? To try to seduce people who are trying to become better, but aren't quite there yet.
Yeah, I think in yeah, for sure. I think in my in the footnotes on my book about this, this relates, this connects up the reason given why the cherubim swords were blunted is because, quote, they do not the swords have no points because they do not need to do any harm, since the enemy has been defeated by Christ and need no longer be feared by those having faith in Christ. And they are aflame with God's love for humanity, which has reversed the exclusionary rule of law in Genesis and reopened the garden with its tree of eternal life. So maybe one of the reasons why the snake is not in paradise is because he's been flushed out and been defeated and like banished. And the snake is punished in Genesis, and what is it, like he's forced to like eat dust or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, again, reading this story very literally can be like problematic for sure, but maybe one idea is that this is where he would be kicked out into, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like from you boot him off the cliff and he lands on the fourth terrace.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you guys.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, you guys. You're the Bible boys. You're doing that last episode.
I don't want to be known as a Bible boy.
I don't know the Bible that well, but kind of another side thought is I went to this museum yesterday, and they have an exhibition on Roman papyri in the 3rd century AD, and there are some pictures of angels. Pretty basic, but it said, that in the Bible, references to the angels are a bit vague actually, and there's no like physical description. There are more reference to just as beings of light or fire and kind of things like that. And it's kind of pretty accurate how Dante sums it up. He says, I couldn't look at this angel; it blinded me.
Yeah, definitely. I was reading about that the other day. There's the whole. I think it's like actually a meme, but the biblically accurate angel is like there are some like different interpretations, and they look kind of horrific, like quite like terrifying.
Yeah.
They're just made of wings, or like they're made of like weird like kind of like orb shaped. But yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, we had this point I think in our Genesis discussion.
We did talk about it a bit. Yeah.
We have on the one hand we have the cherubim, who are often called the sons of God, which are in Italian paintings often depicted as these little chubby angels with wings and like basically children with like swords and shit.
Yeah.
But the first time that the term angel is actually used is in the story of what was it? When God threatens to destroy Gomorrah.
The story of
Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah. The first time that the word angel is used, and I actually don't know what the original Hebrew is here, but is when God threatens to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and an angel is described as basically just a human, like a son of God taken the shape of a human, to be like a messenger. So there's a differentiation, I think, in the original Hebrew between angels and cherubim, which are the sons of God.
Right.
So yeah, it's not clear which Dante is talking about here. It gets messy when you have all Italian and all Hebrew and all that all that stuff.
Yeah,
definitely. There's speaking about like the interpretations, there's this artist who I think I came across him incidentally ages ago, but I found out when we talked about discussing this book that he's actually like, I think, basically done just millions of illustrations based on Dante's work. Yeah. His name's William Blake.
Oh yeah.
And William Blake he's an English painter, and like a lot of his paintings are really I don't know, they're strange. They're not like typical to what you typically think of like biblical and like religious paintings, but then they're not as old, I think, as a lot of them. I think he was alive in like the 1800s,
yeah.
But I would definitely say if people want to have an idea of interpretations of Dante through paintings, there's like a whole book on his paintings of Dante. They're very cool.
Okay, a little wrap up thought here on the serpent appearing at this particular time. We talked about the idea of, your sin gets easier to atone for, the higher you climb and so on. I think it makes a lot of sense that the serpent appears just before they actually enter purgatory. Just still an anti-purgatory, because it's kind of, the point where vice will tempt you the most is before you make the big commitment to actual betterment, to actual atonement, right? When you're like it's like the 20th time you say it, but this time you're serious about quitting drinking. That's when the temptation will be the biggest.
Sure.
Good point.
Yeah, nice, good.
Rufus said every angel is cursed.
Okay.
Angels are scary.
Right, so in Canto 9, we finally enter actual purgatory.
Hey.
And there's a part they meet like an angel or some like godly being guarding the entrance to purgatory. And there are 3 steps. I think it's marble, stone, and ruby. Is it?
I think when I read them, they were described as clear white marble.
Yeah.
The second was darker than the deepest purple of stone, and the third seemed to me porphyry, as flaming red as blood that spurts out from a vein.
Right, but it's red, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, again, I thought about this for a while, and I had to Google it. But the idea is that marble is like perfect, right? Perfect, like marble sculpture, like Greek sculpture, and that's the human that God made, and then stone, like kind of tarnished, dirty, would be humans after the fall, humans on earth, sinful humans, and then the blood red stone would be atonement washed away by the blood of Christ.
Yes, yeah, right.
There's kind of a like Genesis, like paradise, sinful humans on earth, and then sins washed away by Christ's blood.
Yeah,
that's like the 3 steps before we enter purgatory.
Where did you?
Which that seems to be the canon interpretation.
Where did you read that from?
Somewhere on Reddit. No, I cross-referenced a different bunch of comments and articles of people, but that's the only like interpretation I could find that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
But
this seems to like line up with the footnotes on my book as well, and I guess there's another note on top of that is the marble and the porphyry, I guess it's called. This so the first stone and the final stone are both more valuable materials than the stone in the middle. And yeah, I guess that's sort of emphasizing this idea of this returning to a point from before in a way, but in a different form, like some kind of transformation where you start off this perfect marble thing, you go down and you be a shitbag, and then you atone for your sins and you come back up and you're all good again.
You're good again, but in a different way, right?
In a different way.
Yeah.
It's
not marbles.
And because of the sacrifice of Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a note here.
Awesome.
The note here, and mine says, 3 steps are generally taken to represent the 3 stages of repentance. The first step, which is white and mirror-like, stands for self-examination. The second, black, rough step, stands for sorrow, for sin or contrition. The third, flaming red step, signifies satisfaction of the sinner's debt or penance. The colour also suggests ardent love and the shedding of Christ's blood, which provided satisfaction in the world. I think you can...
Okay, slightly different, but yeah, good. That's good.
You can attest to
it. Yeah, that's cool. And thinking about it, 3, apparently the number, I hadn't really thought about this much, but I read this in passing somewhere that the number 3 appears quite a lot in this book.
Yeah.
So maybe we should keep an eye out for that as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have like a conspiracy theory corkboard with all of the lines of string connecting to each other.
Oh, later we have the 5-0. What is it?
Oh god, yeah.
With the chariot.
Oh god,
yeah.
The chariot.
We'll get to that. Okay, I would just skip to the first terrace, Pride. Anything else before that?
Oh yeah, 3 also stands for...
I think we're good, yeah.
3 also stands for the 3 theological virtues, as they're called.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Our lecturer always says that. He's like, hope, charity, and faith. You know, he likes finding that in.
Right. Nice.
And I guess the Trinity, right?
Yeah, the Trinity. The trilogy as well of this book series. Yeah.
Right, and also the Illuminati.
There's also 3 Lord of the Rings books.
Definitely. I just have to plug...
And whatever.
I have to plug in my computer is getting low, so just plug in the battery quick.
Okay, no worries.
No problem.
All right.
Okay, yeah. So the first real sin that we're being introduced to here, the first terrace, which would be the most egregious one, right? Because it gets easier as you climb up.
You assume so, yeah.
Would be pride.
Yeah.
Pride is the first sin we're introduced to. So, I guess open question. What is an example of pride here, and how do people have to atone for it?
I forgot. That's a great idea.
Pass.
Isn't there a kind of mural paintings or something?
I think the murals, the carvings, I think they, at least in the footnotes of my book, they were described as being more of a motivating tool than anything else. Not necessarily a representation of pride.
Yeah, they're the opposite, right?
Right.
Examples of people who are not prideful.
It's something to aspire to.
What is the opposite of pride? Being meek? I don't know.
Humbleness.
Humbleness, yeah.
Something like that.
Humility.
Humility.
Humility. Yeah.
All right. So the three first terraces are separated from the last 4, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's
misdirected. Yeah.
I think it's pride. Yes, exactly. That's the key word. Pride, envy, and what is it?
Wrathful.
We have pride, envy, and wrath. Yeah.
Pride, envy, and wrath, which are, as you said, misdirected love. That's a concept we should probably explain.
So when this is connecting to like what Virgil talks when he talks about of love, right? Like loving not enough, loving too much, and isn't there like three descriptions of love or something that he talks about a little bit? It's later on in the book. And I guess maybe misdirected love is like the not loving enough. I think it's described as, right. So I guess in the case of like sloth, it's it's not.
Well, the first three are, so pride would be, you love yourself, right?
Yeah,
that's the worst one. And then we have envy, which is basically you love things, you love money, or you love like whatever nice car or whatever. And wrath, I guess would be whatever you love you love someone and then you get angry if someone else like interferes with that, right? Like for example, I don't know, you love your children, someone is mean to your children, and then you like beat the shit out of them.
Sure, yeah.
Like it's kind of like you love
in Minecraft.
It's kind of like you love your own things so much that you're gonna take it out on anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Sloth is called deficient love.
And
then
right. There we are. So this misdirected love is too much love then, right? Too much love of things that they make you act in certain ways. Yeah, like you said, like loving yourself too much, loving things so much that you envy people who have those things that you want, and then acting out in wrath when you don't have something that you love, or something that you love is attacked, or what's the word? Like, you'd say attacked.
Threatened or whatever. So I guess the underlying idea is that every sin is simply like one form of misdirected or dysfunctional or perverted love. This is super Christian. This just like seeps of New Testament. All my Old Testament bros would disagree. I guess what do you think of this idea? The idea that every sin is just like some form of misguided or dysfunctional love.
Yeah. This idea of like, firstly, I think the discussion of love like connects a lot to, like, I think anyone today who's like reading the book can find a way of relating their experience to this discussion of love. I think it's probably one of the most like immediately like I don't want to say relatable, but like, it's something that people can so easily discuss, I think, without necessarily being a Christian or anything like that. And it kind of because I know like I can anticipate your answer here. Like, I think I can at least. Like,
what am I gonna say?
I think I can like anticipate what you might think about this. Like, the idea, for example, of self-interest directing human behavior, and that not necessarily, and maybe the like love being a reflection of that in some kind of way, or love being interpreted in that. And like in sociology, that there's the idea of like relationships as like transactional things, and I don't think the idea of love necessarily, it has a kind of awkward time of fitting into that. I think sometimes, like, when we think of like transactions, we tend to think of them as very cold things that aren't love. But at the same time, like, if you have like if you really love your partner, and then let's say you quit your job and you like stop leaving the house and you get really depressed, like see how long they keep loving you for. There are definitely and none of, if you stop treating people with respect, you can't expect like they won't necessarily love you, right? And okay, now try and connect this to this whole thing. So I guess my main point is, my main thing from this is like, I guess there's this idea that love can be this perfect, untouchable thing that can be perfectly practiced, and I guess in most ways you can kind of like deconstruct this idea of love and like try and like take out that kind of magic of it, like if you really think about it in a lot of different ways, which makes me sound really like skeptical about love. And I think there is like something else, like it's maybe not something that's entirely quantifiable, but like but yeah.
Okay, well, Nick is going straight to purgatory. My first thought when hearing this idea that every sin is some misdirected form of love is, how can we strongman the opposition and test this idea? So with that, Ciarán, tell me, where's the love in the Holocaust?
It's not there.
Careful with your answer here.
Put on the spot here, no, yeah.
If you were Dante.
I would agree with Dante. I think he's kind of spot on. Like, although it is like it's a bit cringy. Like we're like, oh yeah, kind of it is all just misdirected love or something. You don't want to think about it, but it kind of like I think it is kind of true. And it's like love kind of ends up being the central kind of theme in his whole work. Like Paradise ends with the words, I'll get it actually. Love that moves the stars or something. Yeah. My will and my desire were turned as wheels that move in equilibrium by love that moves the sun and the stars. So it's kind of like it all just ends in love really with Dante. So yeah, big one, it's important. I don't have any kind of
Yeah, I guess it
that was it.
I guess it depends how willing you are to stretch the definition of love. It definitely makes a lot of sense to me why pride is the first terrace, why it's the most egregious one. Because love for yourself, if you really want to stretch that definition of love, you can basically justify anything based on the grounds of it will benefit me, right? So be it murder, be it like, I don't know, raping someone, like the worst thing you can think of. If you just think, oh, I'm doing it for my own pleasure or sake or whatever, for misdirected love towards yourself, then yeah, it definitely makes sense why pride would be the first one, right? Because you can justify anything based on that.
Well, I think the idea of talking about stretching the definition of love, maybe it's, I don't know how to say this, but like talking about the idea of relationships as transactional. Like when you say that, it's like transactional sounds like a bad thing, but maybe what if it's not actually what if you don't interpret it in that way, and like the opposite way is like talking about love, like if we think of like, no, I'm not going to talk about the Holocaust. Holocaust is it's hard to interpret it through that lens, but like, but it's a case of like just trying to understand words. I don't know what I'm saying.
Either someone tells me where the love in the Holocaust is, or Dante is wrong.
You guys in the Holocaust.
And if you answer that question, the university will cancel your student status.
Wait, what is it?
I think
What is it about the Holocaust?
Oh, go on.
You keep saying the Holocaust.
I was just thinking like, no, I was just thinking. I was thinking.
You're like, oh shit, I don't know Phil that well actually. I've only met him a couple times.
No, I was thinking the idea that every sin is misdirected love. So I was thinking of the worst sin, the worst thing that ever happened. Yeah. How can you possibly find love in the Holocaust, right?
Because it was.
It's I guess it's analogous to the idea that the Christian idea that anyone can be forgiven, right? And it's idea, well, so can Hitler be forgiven as well, right?
Yeah, sure.
Find them in Inferno.
So yeah, I was just trying to test the idea of Dante saying that every sin is misdirected love by finding the most egregious sin and trying to well, where's the love in that then, right?
Okay, so why are there people in hell and Inferno that can't move out? Like, what is the difference between people who've sinned in purgatory and people who end up in hell?
Exactly.
Because
they weren't Christian enough.
Yeah.
But then there are non-Christians in purgatory, right? They just have to wait a little bit longer. So yeah, like maybe. I mean, that doesn't answer the question of like, is all sin misdirected love? But I mean, maybe certain actions can be considered in a completely different way. I don't know. And maybe sin is something that can be atoned for, but there are actions that are worse than that don't even reach that category. I don't know.
Well, I guess if we had to identify what the events, the sin leading up to the Holocaust, it probably would be something like pride.
Oh.
Right. Yeah.
You know, politicians wanting to grasp political power, advance their own status, right? That's all pride, is it not?
Right.
Yeah, and restoring the Great Weimar Republic.
Wrathful as well.
Sorry, Karen, go on.
I would say wrathful as well, maybe. Yeah.
There's wrath in that?
Yeah,
definitely. And envy, obviously. Envy is in that, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing about anti-Semitism, right? It's envy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's a bit of an easy sort of get out of jail free card. Like, I was just misdirected. Those guys, like, you can say that all. You can say that the Holocaust was misdirected. Look, like, it was really, really badly fucking misdirected. Like, terribly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a good thought experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. Holocaust is about as misdirected love as my mom is on trying to use Google. Same amount of misdirection going on.
Damn, man.
Yeah.
That's breaking it down here. She's not even here to defend herself.
She couldn't come on this.
She couldn't figure out Discord.
Okay.
Get on to the podcast.
All right.
Okay.
Where do we go now?
So we have this is, I guess, another significant point. We are in Canto 11. We have like a modified version of the Lord's Prayer, and it's the only time in the book where there's a full prayer written down, and the only complete prayer that's recited in the poem. And but the lyrics are different, and I don't know how it necessarily connects to like pride, but yeah, I'm gonna edit this out.
What's your point, Nick?
I don't have a point. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's
What is interesting?
It's in there. There's like a modified version of the Lord's Prayer.
Okay.
And I don't know why it's not the Lord's Prayer. I don't know why it's not word for word.
Do you think maybe the Lord's Prayer that we know nowadays is actually the modified version, and this is like way older one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't edit it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, what's the content? Yeah.
You shouldn't edit it out, Nick, because there's an important point. Because it's kind of like Dante. He often gets a bit inventive. Yeah. Like he kind of gets inventive with the phrase, like I'll just make my own sort of prayer. And later on, I think it's in Paradise, like, he throws in a kind of a Greek phrase and then mixes it up with Hebrew and kind of, he sort of does his own thing and kind of defies conventions a bit.
Right. Maybe we can interpret it as him being slightly controversial.
And a good thing that you bring up Dante mixing it up and bringing on his own stuff, because it reminds me that there's a big mixture of like Roman stuff, Christian like Bible stuff, Greek philosophy, and one thing I think it's in the canto about pride. We meet Nimrod, who is we just did Genesis, right? Nimrod, I think he's one of the giants, the original giants, who helped build the Tower of Babel.
Right.
Yeah, which obviously is a very biblical reference, but yeah, it's very interesting how Dante blends different styles. He references both like the politics of his own time about Florence and so on, but also goes back to Genesis. He goes back to Greek philosophy, obviously Roman poetry. It's I try to think about it in contemporary terms, like what would it even mean to write something like this book today, right? It's like a complete overview of like literary history, basically, right?
Yeah. Real kind of survey of the past. Real achievement.
Yeah. In a way, it's kind of, I guess, like it's almost like a thesaurus in a way. It has like these. It's like a, when you read books that are like when you read around certain things, or like when you for example, like when we were reading the Bible, like you put yourself in the periphery of a lot of different points in history and a lot of different like context, and you learn a lot from just reading this one text. But in this sense, there is so much reference, and it kind of demands that it doesn't demand that you understand, but like you gain a lot from trying to understand like what's being spoken about here. And yeah, it does seem very intentional as well. It's interesting as well that the giants, like talking about the giants, because that's like a detail in Genesis. It's really not I think the Bible, they come up like 2 times.
Yeah.
These giants are mentioned, and like there's not really that much that's known about them. But they're like humanoid, big things that have names, and I think they have some kind of they are older than humans, or they've been around for longer. And so yeah, it's kind of cool that reference would be made by Dante, because it doesn't seem to be something that's like that widely, like there doesn't seem to be that much information about these things.
And he loves name dropping like the most obscure characters.
Yeah. So at this point we're like, oh sorry, go on.
No, you go on. I was just gonna like, is the giant? Sorry, I've gone on now.
No, it's fine.
Keep going on.
The giant, is he in Canto 11 or is it 12? I can't find it in 11.
It's Nimrod.
Yeah.
It's Nimrod. He names him Nimrod.
I don't think it's in. I think it's a bit later on.
Is it later on?
No, it is 12. I found this here.
It's 12.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, 12 then.
He shows Satan, Briareus, Nimrod, Niobe, Saul, Arachne, Rehoboam, and a load more of other people. Finally, the fall of Troy.
Yeah, but it makes sense that he's in pride, right? And having like assisted building the Tower of Babel and so on. That's kind of humanity's pride, I guess. All right.
So yeah, the thing that I wanted to raise at this point, because we're like we've come through a couple of the stages, is like Dante is like racing through these points in the mountain, right? And like, you know, like we said earlier, the whole story happens within like a couple of days, but we know there have been people who've been there for years, and you know, we meet people along the way who are they're traveling, they're sort of doing things at different points, but I guess like why, when I was reading this, I was thinking, why is Dante so quick? And there is, like we mentioned, time being like quite explicitly described in this book, and it seems like there's like some kind of urgency. I don't know if there's something that happens in Inferno that points to it, or whether it's like just something within this text. But like, why do you think Dante and Virgil move so quickly throughout this book?
Ooh.
Do you have any like thoughts as to why?
I do, but I'd like to hear Philip go first, if I may.
I would just go with the basic thing that I said earlier about, you know, they're just visiting on the Monopoly prison, right?
Yeah.
So that wouldn't really explain why there's like specific references to time, but you know, it makes sense that he's just on a mission to see what these places are like, right? It's Beatrice wanting to scare him like into abandoning his vices. So he's not really there to suffer the whole blow of it. He's just looking, this is how it is, right?
And maybe if he had died, he wouldn't even go to Purgatorio. Maybe his sins wouldn't be enough to warrant actually sending him there in the first place.
Or they would be too grave.
Right. But then I think if they were too grave, he wouldn't be able to pass through. That's kind of what I was
But if he was dead, right? But he's not dead.
But he still I mean, isn't he still not dealing with his sins? You know, at the
he's
beginning,
dealing with his sins, yeah.
We haven't mentioned it, but at the very beginning, when he enters Purgatory, he's given 7 P's are carved into his letter P's are carved into his forehead, and as he ascends each level, they are one by one erased from his head. And you know, I assume from that it's like you've completed this level, you've done this, you've atoned for this.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like there is some kind of atonement happening. But Ciarán, what did you want to say?
First, does anyone know what the P stand for? Because I was thinking about motion target.
I looked it up and I forgot it. But you see it a lot in like on the cross, right? It's the P with the like little X behind it as well. It's some Italian word, but you see it a lot. Right. I'm gonna Google it while you guys keep talking.
So point of the day, the gravitational pull towards God. I think,
right.
That's something which our lecturer told us, which comes from Saint Augustine actually, who formed this. Yeah,
really? Yeah. Okay.
He formed this theory called the pondus amore or something. So it's kind of the draw that people are being drawn towards God, especially when they're in paradise. It's kind of just floating up, and it's kind of happening by their own will. But it's like the way we're pulled. Yeah, we're pulled towards earth, but the soul's in paradise, probably in purgatory. They're orientating towards God. So maybe that's in a way.
Do you think? Yeah, maybe that. So that when you say that, it reminds me of the. In fact, Phil, I see you got the thing, so maybe we'll get that.
Oh, sorry. So just a P. P means peccatum, which is Italian for sin or a wound.
Oh.
Okay, cool. Makes sense, I guess. Who stand for purgatory?
P stands for penis.
Maybe we get like
there was a.
3 B's or something, you know.
So incoming tattoo. Good old forehead tattoos.
And no girlfriend will ever be had again. That's my atonement.
Yeah. So you talked about like the pull towards God, and that reminded me of there's a point where they're talking about hawks, right? Sparrowhawks, or I think it's in 13. There's like a description of there's a simile of like, oh no, sorry, not hawks. I'm talking about lures, like fishing lures.
Right.
And there's this like image of God luring, like this lure that's given out by God to like to go on the righteous path and to live like a virtuous life. But then on the other hand, there are all these like they're described as all these earthly temptations that pull people the other way, and there's this big like contrast between going up and going down. And so maybe that like idea of this pull of God connects to this lure image as well, and maybe like Dante is more susceptible or more like receptive to that pull because of his nature, or because of maybe it's something to do with that.
Good point. Yeah. Also another thought there, but Philip, do you want to come in with anything?
No.
Or it almost, Purgatory almost has this kind of transactional element which you were speaking about before, Nick, where, you know, they get onto the terrace and the pilgrim finds out what he has to find out, you know, he speaks to that person, they say, we're here because, and then they move on. It's not kind of like, you know, all right, we're just going to hang out in this terrace for another few days. They sort of want to keep going. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like,
No, go on. I was gonna say it fits well into this like the storytelling structure. You know, like in many stories, like when people meet characters along the way, they have a function which is specific to that story, and then they like end up like they die or whatever, or like they just disappear. So in that sense, it seems like it makes sense in that way, but also like talking about like function, like you say, it's like finding in these people, the people around you, the means to get closer to God, if you know what I mean, and it's kind of not a great way of saying it, but like using people as using the people around you as a means of getting closer to God, and like using what they offer, or using these parts of them, and maybe in a way like, you know, if you think about the idea of using people, and like we say like transaction and stuff as being kind of cold, but in the logic of this story, maybe I don't think it would be considered cold to use someone in order to try and push towards something that was truly righteous, like genuinely righteous, as opposed to like using people to further your own sinful things. Like, you know, using people to get fame, for example, would be very much different to like using people to get closer to God, or using people to like lead a virtuous life, right? And in that sense, maybe it's not like you're not using people as in draining them, but rather like it's like joining power or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Makes sense.
Cool.
Okay, I would just quickly talk about the other 4 sins that we have left.
Yes.
And feel free to bring any episodes that you thought, you know, interesting.
So we have sloth, avarice and prodigality, gluttony and lust.
What is prodigality?
Yeah, what is prodigality? That's a good question.
That's the same one with avarice, right?
Quick Google search.
Yeah, so in my understanding, greed is simply the want for money.
Yeah.
Whereas avarice is more like I guess maybe you're already wealthy and you want to like preserve your money, or you want to like you put your money above anything else.
Yeah. Dictionary.com says wasteful extravagance and sin.
Right.
Okay.
So you mentioned I forgot his name. You mentioned one guy who is in the same terrace as people for avarice, but he wasn't actually greedy or avaricious or anything. He just he like wasted his money, which I thought was kind of weird. That would be like a sin, but
now I know which terrace I'm going to.
What, do you want to confess any recent expenditure?
That's being a spam.
That's great.
Any recent expenditures you guys want to confess while we're at it?
Too much alcohol. No, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of a connection to hedonism, right? So if you want to attack hedonism as a concept, there's obviously a lust element to it. But I guess the other element would be, sorry, I forgot the word already. What is it?
Prodigality.
Prodigality, which is like, spending all your money on food and so on. And I think the sinful element here is not that you spend money on food and you support your local economy more than you should. But I don't think that's the part that Dante is attacking here. But it's more like, we're in a time where resources are extremely scarce, and most people live in poverty. So really, what if you do have any money, what you should be doing with it is take care of your family, take care of yourself, take care of people's health, and and that kind of stuff, and not spend it on lobsters and alcohol, right?
Yeah, and I mean even like today, I think people know like when they spend money that they maybe they don't, maybe it's, I think people generally like have an idea when they spend money that they don't want to on things that, yeah, it's like being wasteful or being like buying something that maybe you couldn't afford when you know that there are other things that demand a bit more attention, and that does connect to hedonism, like the idea of like what is like a base pleasure or a higher pleasure, and we could talk for ages about what that actually is, but it's like do you buy like some textbook that helps you study to get a job that ends up furthering your situation and making you more happy, or do you spend the same amount of money on like a nice meal? Maybe you can think about it in that way as well.
Yeah, and both prodigality and also greed invoke the idea of opportunity cost.
Right. Yeah.
That is to say, you could donate money, for example, right?
True.
But
Yeah.
if we think of like, we read around Christmas period, the Christmas Story by Dickens, right? Scrooge.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be on this terrace, right? Obviously, at least
yeah.
Before his Reformation, and the sin is not that he like hoards money or that he would spend it wastefully or anything like that, but simply, there is an opportunity cost to any use of money, and if you have the power to do good but you choose not to, or you choose to instead fulfill your own hedonism, then that makes it sinful.
Right. Yeah.
It's not eating a good meal that is sinful in itself, right?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. I think you're in your element here, Philip, because it's all kind of economy terrace.
Yeah, definitely.
The econ terrace.
They would have a terrace for that.
If you majored economics,
your sin of being really fucking annoying.
Okay, what do you guys think about lust being the last one? That is, basically the lightest one, the least severe sin. Do you agree with that? What do you think about that?
I thought it was there because it was the worst thing, but now that you say it, I realize I've probably gotten it the other way around.
Yeah, I think it's because it gets easier to climb as you go, right? So I think the point is that the worst sin is pride, probably at the bottom.
I see.
I think it's an inversion of hell, where hell it gets worse as you get deeper down.
Right.
But I think in this one,
So I wasn't so sure when reading this that the sins are necessarily ordered in terms of their like badness, and like one of the reasons there doesn't seem to be like a very clear like progression of things. So they describe things getting easier as you go, but like really I think it's lust or it's the gluttony or the route from gluttony to lust where they go through fire, right? Like, and this is like described as a really really difficult part, one that like the pilgrim doesn't want to do and has to get coaxed through by Virgil and Statius. So like, I don't think necessarily I wasn't really thinking as I was reading them they're necessarily ordered, like in terms of like a reverse severity or reverse like, level of badness sin in terms of sins, right?
I think that's exactly what's going on.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the idea of you go. Sorry, go.
No, I would have thought so as well. Like, yeah, that was all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's the idea of it gets easier to climb as you go, and also again I kind of read like other people's interpretations of it, and it does seem like that is the common interpretation. But we find another hint given by.
Well, just to clarify, you think that
the canon interpretation is that they are ordered according to
right? Okay.
But we were actually given a hint as well. I forgot which canto this is, but Virgil talks about the idea of free will.
Oh, yeah.
And we have this whole idea, this discussion about, God gives humanity free will because without free will, there isn't any standard to judge people on, whether they're sinful or not, right?
Yeah.
And, the enticement to vice, which even invokes ideas of good and evil, right? In paradise, in Eden, if you can't do any bad, if you don't have any knowledge of good and evil, if you haven't eaten the fruit, there's no point to judge humans.
Yeah, you're more as an animal in that respect.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the reason why, for example, pride and envy are the most severe sins is because they're actually consciously committed sins in abuse of your rational faculties of free will. Whereas lust, for example, is a beast.
Okay,
is a kind of beastly based desire, or sloth as well, right? You rationally you want to do your work, you want to do this, but your base desire, your biology, if you want, you're addicted to alcohol or whatever.
Right.
You just can't do it, or I guess your determination isn't strong enough. Whereas pride and envy you are consciously abusing your rational faculty, your free will, to do evil, and you know it.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I think
fair enough. Yeah.
Is it almost like?
Well argued.
Is it almost like they all kind of come out of the one, and like they all sort of stem from a sense of pride in a way, sort of pride of, I don't know, being who you are, and from that, like you're not very. I'm not sure if that's who you are. Maybe you get an idea what I mean.
You mean like pride as the cardinal sin, and then everything stemming
Yeah,
from it?
I mean, I'm not sure I'd entirely believe it, but maybe that's what Dante is trying to hint at.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it's like when maybe you could think of like Adam and Eve eating the forbidden fruit as a prideful act, right? Like, a challenge to God in that sense. Like, yeah, and it does connect. Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good point.
Right. We want to have the same knowledge that God has.
Yeah,
we want to
yeah,
have
yeah.
knowledge of good and evil, right?
For sure, yeah.
And then that would be the first sin. second sin would be envy, Cain and Abel.
Right, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Shit. I'm adding some new points to the conspiracy quote board. But no, that's a good point. Yeah, good stuff.
As a small note about pride, maybe. A lecturer liked to say that he thinks maybe Dante would have fit onto the first terrace because there's a few points when I think it's on the Terrace of Pride where Dante says there's this poet. He's saying, oh, there was the painter Cimabue, and now there's Giotto, and then there's this poet, and now there's another. He's going to be the best. So maybe that's the Dante.
Right.
Crossfire.
Yeah, cool, nice.
Okay, I'm kind of ready to disband from the terraces and move on to Entrance of Paradise, unless you guys have any other.
Trying to think. Is it worth talking about Stachio?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably.
I love Stachio.
We should probably mention him.
I think he's great.
Yeah, he's.
All right, go on
seems
then.
like a cool guy.
It's kind of like they hear the mountain shake and there's huge trembling, and then they just walk on, and Stachio's like, "Oh yeah, that was me. I just got released from Purgatory," and then he happens to say, like he just seems like he just seems like a cool character.
Yeah, and he sort of like they kind of him and Virgil sort of take on these like parental role for the pilgrim as they go up.
Yeah.
Wait, is this a guy who's like a big fan of Virgil, but he didn't know?
Yeah, he is.
Or...
I don't.
Yeah. I think
he's described as a shade, as the shade, right? He doesn't have like, in my edition at least, like, and I assume that's because he's been released, like he doesn't have like a proper physical form anymore.
I see. Okay.
But like when they lead him through the final, like the fiery corridor, Virgil like coaxes the pilgrim in, and it's described as like trying to coax the child with a piece of fruit, like trick a kid into doing something with a piece of fruit. And then Stachio walks behind, like the parent walking behind to make sure he goes through safe. There's something kind of like, there's a lot of points where he's sort of made to appear like a child, or made to appear like he's he requires care, and he obviously refers to Virgil as his father a lot throughout and he refers to him as Lord and
Mentor.
Maybe there's some other ways, mentor. Yeah,
they grow very close, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, that like paternal connection is super clear.
Well, funny about the Statius part is where I think Statius is like talking about what a big fan of Virgil he is, and he's like, I wish I could have met him when I was alive.
Yeah, that's it.
And then, but he doesn't know that Virgil is right in front of him.
And then Dante smiles, and he's like, "Why are you smiling?"
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he like looks at Virgil like, "Can I tell him?" And Virgil's like, "Go on." And then he like fanboys a bit.
Yeah.
It's cute.
It's also interesting how Dante kind of portrays Statius as that he had this kind of Christian conversion in his life, because it's kind of doubted whether it actually happened. Like Statius is said to, I worship the Christian faith in secret, but I didn't tell anyone. But no one actually knows it.
Really?
Right, and that's why he doesn't have anyone to pray for him while he's in purgatory, which is why it takes so long for him, right?
Must be him. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you had any relatives praying for him, it wouldn't take that long. And I think he's there as well on multiple counts of, like, you're not just in purgatory for one sin necessarily, right? You can go through multiple.
Of course, yeah.
Not entirely clear, really. Like whether they keep going up different terraces or they just on the one.
Right, yeah. It seems like it would be they would at least go through them, but whether they would be like challenged or not, I don't know. But then also, why does Dante have the 7 on his forehead? Like, would everyone have the 7? Would you only have a few? Would you only have the ones that correspond to your sins?
I think only those few that correspond, yeah. And Dante, again, is like visitor status different. Like.
So he's like, we're giving you the full tour.
Yeah, yeah.
It's actually like, it's a pass.
We're still going to have to climb the mountain, but maybe you don't have to atone for every...
Right.
Okay, so eventually we get to this point where Virgil and Dante have to part. They have to part ways.
Oh.
And this
a sad moment.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, very sad.
Oh, it's hard, yeah.
Because Virgil's been there all through like hell and then purgatory, and he's like, well, I can't actually go to heaven because actually I should be in hell.
Yeah.
I'm just here for the tour. I'm just guiding you, and they've grown really close, and there's this like I don't want to call it an alley. There's like this path of fire that they have to walk the last little bit. And Dante is kind of like, I don't want to go through the fire. Fuck that. Like this, and Virgil's like, no, we'll do it together. We can do it. And then they walk through the fire. But actually, Virgil has to go back through the fire, right? He didn't have to do it. The only way he went to that is so that Dante doesn't have to go alone.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a very like a cute like bro moment.
I know, but also he's like very intentional about Statius walking behind as well. And that seemed really intentional. Like it's making sure that he doesn't get lost behind, making sure that he's like encased, like he's like covered on both sides by these people who like love him and want the best for him. It feels there's a lot of love at this part of the book. Definitely a huge amount of that.
It kind of speaks to the importance as well of kind of having like. In order for in the book to develop spiritually, you kind of need mentors to guide you, stuff like that.
Yes, good point. Yes.
Yeah, and Virgil is a there's no trace of self-interest or sin through his action, and really like what do you think is motivating Virgil? Like why does Virgil act like this? Why does he care for Dante?
Well, I think mentoring is one of the most real or intense pleasures, not in a hedonistic way, but in the same way that educating your child is kind of a pleasure. Like it makes you feel valuable, meaningful, right? And obviously Virgil has to suffer for, I guess, eternity for his sins. But if he can help anyone else out to avoid his mistakes, right? That kind of gives him a meaningful existence.
Yeah.
I guess there's the sense of obeying the will of God as well. I mean, in the first canto when they meet Cato, he says, we're here under the command of God.
And I guess maybe for someone in his position, like the ultimate like affirmation of that, like the will of God, would be to be as good a person as you can, even with the knowledge that you're going to be banished for the whole of eternity afterwards.
Right.
Which is like really intense, super intense, but yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Nice. So we finally reach the earthly paradise, don't we?
Yeah, and we meet Beatrice.
Yeah.
Matilda first, no?
Matilda first, yes. Okay. You want to talk about Matilda?
Maybe. She's meant to represent kind of... we've been going for like 2 hours now as well. So, like, but she's just meant to kind of represent the state of humanity before the fall, right? But
Okay.
I guess so. Yeah, I had trouble interpreting her being there, but
Me too. Yeah.
she is she the one who drags Dante through the river to wash away his sins?
Yeah. So yeah, we arrive in this place, and it's as beautiful as like it's we're expecting it to be. We meet Matilda, and then we do eventually come across Beatrix, right? And
yeah, Dante's dead girlfriend.
Yes. So this is like the main point, the main like I guess like the crux of the story, like getting to this point. And yeah, and so what happens when he sees Beatrix? Do you remember what happens like immediately after?
Is this when she like unveils herself and she's so beautiful and he's like, why did I commit all these sins on earth when you are my only love and I should have done my best to get to you?
I wasn't thinking of that specifically, but yeah, but the thing that I was
he comes what
he says he turns toward Virgil.
And he's not there.
It's described. He is like a child running to his mother in distress, only to find him gone. So he just sort of pops and disappears.
Yeah.
It's like at that moment when the climax is reached to the story, he just kind of out of the periphery just vanishes. I thought that was like super sad, super kind of like because of how understated it was. I think.
It's called
friends we lost along the way.
It's called The Tragedy of Virgil.
And I guess within.
Yeah.
Really.
It has its own term. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's super beautifully like. There's another thing like I don't want to spend too much time on this point, but like maybe it's a translation thing, but in some ways I think it's not, like the structuring of this book and like the way that these kind of things occur are just like so beautifully like put together and so beautifully like written, and just the idea behind them of like Virgil just like quietly disappearing and it being illustrated by Dante turning around and like looking for him is like it's really cool.
And the same kind of happens with Stations as well. Like he's just his name is mentioned like once in the earthly paradise, and then where's he gone? No one knows.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think in as well in I think it's the point just before they enter paradise. Virgil like says his final words, and from that point, even though he's still there and there are points where he's interacting with Dante, he doesn't actually speak any words when he's in I don't think he speaks any words when he's in the earthly paradise, or at least there's definitely a point where he stopped speaking. And in my footnotes it was like there's the last thing he says, and the footnotes are like, these are the last words that Virgil says in the whole story. And at that point I was like, what's going to happen to Virgil?
It's kind of like he just looks around and Virgil's like looking surprised, and Virgil's like doesn't know.
Yes, yeah. Virgil has a cheeky look on his face.
Good man, Virgil. Does anyone want to read out the last lines of Virgil's speech, just maybe for the listeners? They might want to.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Have you got it?
I don't have it. No.
All right. I don't think I've got it here. Okay.
Come on. Oh yeah.
Do you know what canto it's in? You've got it. Go ahead.
Canto 27. If any of you want to go.
Cool.
I read it out in class when you did it.
Cool.
Okay. Right, for me?
Yeah, please.
Right.
Treat us.
For the readers. Once the stairs swiftly climbed Raoul behind and we were standing on the topmost step, Virgil addressed me, fixing his eyes on mine. You now have seen, my son, the temporal and the eternal fire. You've reached the place where my discernment now has reached its end. I led you here with skill and intellect. From here on, let your pleasure be your guide. The narrow ways to seek are far below. Behold the sun shining upon your brow. Behold the tender grass, the flowers, the trees, which here the earth produces of itself. Until those lovely eyes rejoicing come, which tearful once urged me to come to you, you may sit here or wander as you please. Expect no longer words or signs from me. Now is your will upright, wholesome, and free, and not the heat pleasure will be wrong. I crown and litter you, Lord of yourself. The last words.
Badass.
Yeah, so we have the proper like mentor arc of making your student, I guess, into a more superior guide than yourself. He's basically, I have nothing more to teach you, and you're better prepared than I possibly could be to go on moving from that, right?
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, you've come a long way.
Okay, I want to talk about the chariot.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, this is another important thing we need to go over.
Okay, so Nick, what's going on in the chariot without interpretation?
So okay, there's trying to recall this. They are in the earthly paradise. We have Beatrice and Dante, and then loads of other people come around from different places and different animals and different creatures and things.
Griffins.
Yeah, and then a chariot comes, and then the chariot crashes, or like
the chariot has a vixen in it. It's called in my book, or
a
prostitute or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we have an eagle attacking from above, and we have a serpent, or like basically the devil attacking from below. And I think,
well, the earth opens up as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And a dragon comes out.
A dragon, yeah.
Most disaster ever.
And then the chariot, the broken chariot, turns into like faces, or like faces come out, heads come out of the chariot. I think right at some point. Yeah, it was at this point, like after this whole story, I was just like, if I were writing a story where like earthly paradise, this incomprehensible beautiful place, was like the crux of the story, I would probably do something similar and just go kind of crazy, because it's like, how else are you going to express how overwhelming this place is?
Well, I think there's I had some thoughts about this, and I basically confirmed my suspicions while also gaining some additional knowledge by Googling about this.
Yeah.
But so we have the chariot is basically the church as an institution.
Yeah. Okay.
And the vixen, or the prostitute, or whatever in your version it's called, is the church officials being corrupted, and the eagle is government corrupting by power from above. And I think, isn't there also a giant or something appearing? Or is it someone's like messing with the
giant and a whore?
It's a giant.
Giant and a whore, yeah.
Right.
Basically, so that again is
I've seen that video.
I know you have. But that's kind of a we have like earthly powers, kings, politicians, the state, interfering with the church, and the church kind of whoring itself out, contributing, like, if you're going to threaten our authority, we're just going to go along with the state and, justify holy wars and all these terrible things, right? And then the earth opening up and the dragon coming out is also like Satan, vice, tempting, and so on. And I think, as bizarre as this scene is, the takeaway point is that this is kind of a direct attack on the church, right? Where earlier we had the idea of indulgences, people praying for you from outside purgatory. where I thought Dante is kind of going easy on the church. But I don't think he is, because in this scene, if this interpretation is correct, he's really saying, like, yeah, the church is in a really terrible state, and being threatened both by vice from the devil, but also the powers of the state.
Right.
The only thing that doesn't make sense to me is why this is in paradise.
Yeah.
It seems like the kind of ultimate corruption, like, to get to that point and to then... Because I feel like, I'm not sure if I might be misremembering, but, like, the chariot is described as quite this, like, resplendent, like, beautiful thing. And, like, it brings to mind, like, these really, like, elaborate cathedrals and churches, and really, in a way, maybe you could think of it as, like, indulgent, in a sinful way.
Yeah, because at the time, we obviously, with the Catholic Church, we have all these indulgences and all these things where people are literally starving.
Yeah.
But, the church amasses wealth and gold and all these things, right?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a timely place.
Yeah.
Kind of a timely place to put it, just sort of, because it's something that keeps going at, corruption, decay of morals. But it's an entirely bizarre scene.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. It's kind of the little lighthearted, like, funny thing after the sad Virgil thing.
Yeah.
I worried about Beatrice showing up. Like, she shows up and it's not like, oh, Dante, it's great to see you again. She just starts lashing into him and giving out, you forgot me, and the word that came to mind is like, she shows up this kind of divine bitch, like, that's what
Stop being sad about Virgil. Pull yourself together. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's also interesting how he's not the final guide either, as in, by the time of Candle 31 of Paradise, he leaves as well, and I think it's St. Bernard, and he takes Dante to God. So it's kind of the...
really? Okay.
Different stages of guides.
Interesting. Okay. Finally, we also have Mary.
Yeah.
That's kind of, toward the very end. And I guess with that we can kind of close our train wreck summary.
Mary.
Any thoughts on this
Where
one?
Where is Mary?
Do we not have Mary appearing?
Mary does appear in 33.
Really?
Wait, let me read the little intro of Canto 33 in mine. Saint Bernard supplicates the Virgin Mary that Dante may have grace given to him contemplate the brightness of the divine majesty, which is accordingly granted, and Dante then himself prays to God for ability to show forth some part of the celestial glory in his writings. Lastly, he is admitted to a glimpse of the great mystery, the Trinity, and the union of man with God.
Canto 33.
Yes, 33. In
Wait, no. Wait, what? I'm being a moron right now. This is Paradiso.
What? I mean, I have a mention of Mary and Purgatorio.
There is a mention of Mary and Purgatorio. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead to a different. Sorry.
It's in line 5, I think. Hardly more grief showed in the face of Mary at the cross.
Yeah.
Scratch that. Just jumped ahead.
We have to save that one for next time.
It was just...
yeah, what?
It was the Pondus Amore drawing Philip towards God.
The Lord is calling for me to finally get over with this shit. I wanna kick the bucket. So what do you think of the ending, I guess, or what kind of thoughts did it leave you with?
I guess I could read the final couple of lines to get a taste. So he's addressing the reader directly. He says, "If, reader, I had more ample space to write, I should sing at least in part the sweetness of the drink that never would have sated me. But since all the sheets made ready for this second canticle are full, the curb of art lets me proceed no farther. From those most holy waters I came away remade, as are new plants renewed with new sprung leaves, pure and prepared to rise up to the stars."
Right.
So there's like, we're pure and prepared to rise up to the stars. We're ready for this, for the next story. It's kind of in a way, I can imagine this being quite inspiring, maybe, to read. Like if you're,
If you're not me.
if I wasn't, if you,
I could imagine.
If I weren't a degenerate,
I could imagine this being inspiring. If you're not me.
No, I mean to like look at this. I mean, it's inspiring for everyone, I guess, but like through like a Christian lens specifically, like if you're looking at this book as like a this is showing me how to get closer to God, or this is showing me the structure of like my eventual salvation. I think this, it's inspiring. Right?
I'd agree. Yeah, I heard that people even used to read this in medieval times as kind of equivalent to the Bible, but then kind of as the church got a bit more orthodox, kind of don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting how every canticle finishes with the word stars. It's like that in the Inferno.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I noticed when you said, I remember when you read the last of Paradiso. Yeah, it also had stars in that.
It's obviously important.
Interesting.
That's quite important. It's also like he could have.
What were your thoughts when we finished?
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No.
Go on.
I was just gonna ask Phil, but you already had a point, so go ahead.
Oh, I've spoken too much.
You're the guest. You're supposed to speak too much. No, that's alright. Go on, Phil. What were your thoughts?
Wait, no, I'm talking. What the fuck? Okay.
I mean, well,
Oh god. I mean, again, not to recap too much, but the big overarching thing is this idea of, Purgatorio being a mountain that gets easier as you climb it. I think that has real implications for also life on Earth, right? The idea that, to battling vice, the snake that comes at night, the more you kind of submit to it, the easier it'll get to fall into like bad habits, and the harder it will be to come out of them. And in the opposite sense, the more you commit yourself to good and to virtue, the easier it will be to do that. And you can really apply that on like a very like micro level perspective on your everyday life, right? If your room is completely disorganized and you're completely like you feel like unable or like completely lazy to do anything about it, it'll be really hard to fix it. But once you organize your room, it won't be that bad to keep it that way for like every day or every week, right?
For sure. It's like if you have this reminds me actually. There's a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is like a fiction. I think it's from like the 1970s or something, or maybe a bit older. But it's like kind of about Zen philosophy, and but the whole analogy is about maintaining a motorbike, and the idea is that if you have a motorbike that you use, you have to maintain it and you have to keep on top of these things to keep it running in a certain way. And every time you do something which repairs all the problems that come from, there are inevitable problems that arise from owning a motorbike, because it's a physical thing. It will age, it will rust, parts of it will break. So that is an inevitable part. But then dealing with that correctly gives you this thing which is called described as gumption, which is like positive motivating force. And the more that you repair the bike and the more diligently you tend to this bike, the more gumption you receive, and the more kind of it's like this positive upward growing sense. And I think that's very, very applicable. It's very applicable to this here. And I think maybe where the idea of that differs to this book is that, you know, there's this idea of like, I can clean my room every day, but I still feel like shit because the problems aren't my room. The problems are other things in my life, and which are maybe more substantial. And maybe you'd feel worse if your room was looked terrible, but maybe you wouldn't as well. You know.
Well, whatever those problems are, the Dante approach would be that, you know, it'll be hard to address them at first, but you know, once you build habits of positive behavior,
yes,
it will be easier to keep on those roads, right?
Right.
Just
sure.
believe in God as well.
Yeah. That's true. Well, this it reminds, like, that whole thing is like funny because it's like these things aren't entirely fair as well. Like you said, believing in God is like, okay, you have 30 years less than everyone else, or like 30 times as fewer prayers or whatever. There was also a description of like being touched by sin, and like the idea of like being touched rather than as if it came from outside, which it does, completely randomly. And the idea you could go your whole life without being, quote, touched by sin, and you would be more qualified to go to heaven than someone who, for example, lived in an environment which was surrounded by sin. You know, like if you live in a place where nothing is ever bad, and there are just these perfect conditions where sin never touches you, and you never feel the opportunity to feel like prideful or envious or whatever. Does that make you more like qualified to go to heaven than someone who happens to live in an environment which is the complete opposite of that? You know what I mean? Like there is this like issue of I don't know. Like, is it, for example, if a baby dies within like a few days of it being born, does that mean that it's just automatically goes to heaven? There's parallels with this in the Japanese.
If it wasn't baptized, it would go to hell, right?
Sure. There's parallels with this in the fucking Japanese language education system. Where it's like you assume when you submit a piece of work, for some of our like teachers, like you start off with 100%. Everyone starts out with 100%, and every mistake you make, they take something off, and it's like eventually you just get chipped away to this point where it's so instead of being accumulative, it's reductive.
Yeah, and like basically the more you actually put effort into writing a longer elaborate piece, the more the chance that you fuck up is higher.
This is my point, right? Yeah. So it forces people to behave. What that does is it makes people play safe. It makes people play to the teacher. And in this case, I guess playing to God is maybe not a bad thing, but like, you know, it's like that seems like a kind of problem to me.
All right. Any closing thoughts on your end?
One thought about the way Dante says, you know, I could keep going, you know, I could keep speaking, and it's almost like this, like there's a lot you could say about Dante, but we're also carved by the fact that it's nearly 10 p.m. for you guys, and he says, you know, I have to.
No, please elaborate.
Yeah, he says I have to curb my art, and you know, it's kind of like the necessities of keeping it short, keeping the 133 lines are how to coping.
Right.
Yeah. That's just final thought. Yeah. Good ending. Well done, Dante.
Yeah, for sure. It's like these things, they are all constrained by certain formats and certain forms. Like Purgatorio is also constrained in ways as well, and like there are just these sort of rules that we have to like abide by in a way. Like, maybe he's also kind of referencing to. I don't know. Cool.
Well, I was happy I read it. I was even more happy to discuss it with you guys because that made me understand it more.
Totally.
But I will never read it again. Or at least if I do, I'll get a better translation.
Yeah, I feel the opposite. Honestly, I like came out of this and I'm like, damn, I want to know what happens next. What happens when they meet God? What's gonna happen?
Maybe we should do Paradox.
We could, yeah. We'd be happy to have you on it sometime again.
100%.
I don't want to be.
Yeah, you've been a dream. It's been a great conversation.
Cheers, man. I don't want to be your only guest of honor. You know, you can get better people than me as well. Random guy from Dublin.
We have a couple people in the pipeline.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it was great to speak to you guys. Yeah, great pleasure.
Likewise.
Yeah, awesome.
And with that, good night, good morning.
Well, what are we doing next? Do we have anything?
We don't. Don't open that can of worms because we haven't decided.
If you have any correspondence, send it to bookboyspod@gmail.com. I think that's it.
That's it.
Cool. All right.
Amen, y'all.
Banging.
Book boys.